Hi, good morning, everyone. And I'm your host, Marsha Buckner, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everybody who is able to join our Data Protection Day webinar in honor of Data Protection Day, Data Protection Week. In today's itinerary, what we're going to be doing is educating the public around some of the common breaches within your organization and also sharing some steps to help you mitigate against that. So, we do have a lovely panel here, both Leslie and Wilson, who is our technical or professional services team lead. And we also have Jalil Henry, who is our technical lead for security. But before we actually begin our panel discussion, we're going to run through a very short video to help highlight some of the common breaches within our organization.
Hi, how are you doing? I'm trying to find Burger King. Where is it? Okay, I'm not coming there. It's down there.
So you go straight on this side.
I cannot be seen right there.
Straight down. Yeah, man, on this side. They're on this side.
Okay, and I can walk, it's not too far from me.
Morning. Get to zero? The sign. What day is today? 17? Here you go.
Thank you so much.
Morning, everybody.
Hello, delivering some packages.
Hi. Where are you going to?
Sorry, just delivering some packages. That's all. Just delivering some packages. Sorry, not here. Not here. Sorry.
I'm going to share.
I've been. Who gave you gave them permission to take things to the back of the office? Security.
Have a good day.
All right.
Hey, hello, how you doing? Hey, can I help you?
Just working with the audit team.
Oh, the audit team?
Mm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right,
just
okay,
did some
just checking.
inventory. Yeah.
Yeah, everything's all right?
Yeah, man.
Okay, great, excellent.
Wow, wow. Some very impressive acting skills there, Leslie Ann. Very impressive acting skills. So now I'm gonna actually hand over to our panel, both Leslie Ann and Jalil over here, and I'd love to know, guys, what was the first breach you identified happening in this video? Leslie Ann?
All right, thank you, Marsha. I'll be sure to thank you for this opportunity in my Oscar-winning speech. So the first breach that was evident was the employee register at the entrance of the building. So when the bad actor came in, they were able to access this document and able to take pictures of employee information. And that's a breach because you shouldn't be able to access that information just being someone walking in off the road. So that's a concern.
Thanks for that, Leslie. But I mean, we're all data subjects, right? So I kind of see this happening quite a lot. I won't call any companies, but it is something that I even notice when I go to places, they ask for this information, for you to document your name. And sometimes you kind of wonder, is this really important? Is this really critical for them to know? But we're all data subjects from a customer standpoint and even employee, because is it necessary? Is this something we actually need to do? Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it depends on the organization. So you would want to keep a record of, who is coming into your building and where they're going. However, what needs to happen is that you need to be mindful of who has access to that information. What do you do with the information after? How long are you keeping that information for? What information are you asking for? Because if you don't need all of the information, then you're putting yourself in a position where you're processing more data than you actually need, and persons may or may not have access to it. That book could be on the desk for a week, a month, a year, who knows, so.
What about the technical side? I mean, there must be a way to mitigate against that. Maybe technical measures we could actually put in place for employees, for customers when they actually come to the location. What would that look like?
So from a technical perspective, what that would look like would, all right, so instead of using a book, best practice nowadays would be to maybe digitize it. So you digitize it and also put some level of encryption on it so that the only person that has access to it would be the persons that need to access it. So no threat actor, no attacker can just walk into the establishment and try to gain information from it.
You said it's book. So when they have a book, do they actually store it in somewhere that is protected for the company? And how do they store that information? How long should they store it for? Those are some of the questions I would want to know, because again, going back to data protection and how long you store some of this information, I think is critical for us to understand.
Agreed, Marsha. And as I said, it's important to know what information and what regulations are in place for how long you need to store it. So depending on the type of organization you are, there may be different requirements for keeping track of that information. I don't believe that in the Data Protection Act, it specifies how long you need to keep certain information. I think it's a case by case situation. So you just need to be mindful of that data and remember that you are protecting all data subjects. So not just customers or vendors, but employee information as well. Because John Brown, as a person, yes, that's personal information, his name. But if you have John Brown who works at X Limited, now you're able to narrow that down. You're able to target that person or that organization just based off that information. So
Most of the time as well, Leslie, and those records are kept all over the place. And so if somebody is able to get a hold of those records, most of the times they have sensitive information, PI information. So personal identified information on staff members. And if you gain access to those books, you get a lot of information. I know that a lot of people might say that, oh, it's not they can't use that information against anybody. You can. I've done it before with a simulation before.
I know, I was like
It was
asking
authorized.
a while ago, like
It was an
what?
authorized simulation, but yes.
Okay, thank you guys for that. We do have a poll question. How many breaches did you notice in that video? Would love to hear from the audience, guys. This is an interactive and engaging session. We do want to ensure folks are actually picking up some of these breaches. So please go ahead over to our poll question. How many breaches did you notice in the video? And if you have any questions, please type them in the chat. We'll be able to answer them at the end of the webinar. All right, back to you, Leslie. And I saw you doing a lot of things in that video. I saw you moving around, going through doors. Tell me, what was the second thing? What else did you guys identify?
well, the second identified breach would be considered tailgating because the nefarious actor was able to gain access to the building without the proper structures or security measures in place. But I'll let Jalil tell you more what tailgating actually means.
So essentially, tailgating is where an attacker follows an unaware user to gain access to an area without authorization. So typically, to prevent tailgating access, what organizations have in place, they have something called a man trap. So a man trap is a measure of physical security. It's basically like an access control system in most cases. It's a small space with two sets of interlocking doors, such as the first set of doors must be closed before the second one is open. So it's like a security feature where to gain access to the building, you go through two levels of access. And in that video, the breakdown was pretty noticeable. I mean, just because the person had some boxes, all of the security measures that the company had in place completely fell apart.
Yeah, I feel like they were trying to be polite by holding the door, thinking you're delivering a package, but sometimes I think those are sometimes the most disguised
Yeah, I
ways
mean,
of doing things, coming in saying you're an auditor, coming in saying you're with the fire brigade and you come in to check some things. But yeah, they can be very sneaky in coming into your building. So it's really for persons to really be that human firewall too, right?
yeah.
I know that
It's
sounds
all,
it.
it's
For
all,
everyone who is on the call, human firewall, of course, I'm gonna ask them to break that down. So don't worry. Jalil, tell me all about what human firewall is.
so essentially a human firewall, as a human firewall, you are the first line of defense against threat actors. So as a member of the organization, you have to remember that you might have some level of access or some level of access to information within the company. So you are always a target. And so in that case, um, you are the first line of defense to protect the organization from those actors. So he's acting as a firewall, essentially.
So
Kind of
people,
first and last.
First and last.
yeah,
You may be the entry point, but you may also be the person that can stop whatever is happening next.
yeah, no, that is very valid. Thanks, Leslie. So it's really for us to be very vigilant in our environment, in our space, ensure we stay on our P's and Q's and actually look out and ask the right questions, because sometimes people will say to you who you think, they're saying, oh, I'm from here. Can I see your ID? Little questions like that to help break
And
it away
questions always follow the policies that are put in place.
for your organization.
Always, regardless if the person has a heavy set of boxes or donuts, in some cases people use that as well.
Mhm.
Always follow the policies or procedures that are in place.
Yeah.
And from a data protection standpoint, you are required to have measures and policies in place to protect the information, and you should have regular testing of those policies just to kind of see how they stand up. So you may have had a policy in place that said, well, you need to ensure that all visitors have an ID and everybody's escorted to where they should be, and there's security awareness training. You have the policies, but how are you testing them? You have to do regular tests to see if these things actually work. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's valid. And I'm gonna just jump into what you just said a while ago, Leslie, and about policies. Is that a mandatory measure coming out of the data protection law? Is that something that organizations need to have in place? Tell me about that. And is it just organizational policies or is it security policy specific that they need to have?
Well, they do need to have organizational policies, but there needs to be some that are specific to the security of the information and systems, because you are charged with maintaining the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of these systems. So you need to have measures in place and you need to have something that enforces those measures. So a policy behind that to ensure that persons know what should happen and it's documented as to how you should be protecting the data.
Thanks. And you did mention something about testing.
Mhm.
So can you share a little bit more about what you meant by that? Like when you test?
Okay, well, there should be regular vulnerability assessments, technical risk assessments, and even penetration tests. So from a standpoint of testing your security, the systems, you need to do regular external tests just to make sure that you're not able to get into the system and access from the outside. You also need to do regular vulnerability assessments from the inside to see, where you're vulnerable, what issues you're having. Do you have outdated operating systems? Do you need to install patches, things like that? And also technical risk assessments to have an overall picture of any technical risks or risks that exist. So for example, if you did a site walkthrough or something, just to note, well, in this area, there are always hard drives on the desk. You don't know what's there, if they're unattended, if there's data on them, there are machines that are being left around. And is it secure enough to protect from external persons being able to walk in and pick up a machine or pick up a hard drive or take a picture of protected documents? So that's what I mean by regular testing.
Testing, thanks for that. No, that's so important to understand because when we say test, what kind of tests are we talking about? And I have a whole lot of questions around that, but I know I need to kind of stick to this script and kind of go to what it is we're going to talk about with the next incident. But I do have some questions for you around that testing and we'll come back to it. But let's continue to look on the video, right, that took place because there were some more things. So I want you guys to kind of share with me what else, what other breaches were there, and kind of dive into that a little more before we go into some more of those tests.
All right. Well, after the tailgating, as I mentioned, the person was able to walk around the office and then they were able to take pictures of confidential documents.
Yeah.
No member of staff, brought it to their attention to stop the user. I mean, one member actually spotted them, but
Yeah.
they trusted them. But even if you trust somebody within the organization and you feel like as if they're acting suspicious, trust but verify.
Zero trust is
No,
that one.
trust but verify. Verify that the person is where they're supposed to be. Verify that the person doesn't have malicious intentions. Just trust but verify.
Got it. All right. So well, I do see a poll question. So let me just share with the members here. Have you registered with the Information Commissioner? Have you registered with the Office of the Information Commissioner? And I think persons, it's a yes or a no. So feel free. Have you put your particulars together? I know she has her site up. And of course, I'm going to ask Leslie Ann about this because a lot of people want to know about what are they supposed to be doing now? We have a 6-month window. The law was gazetted in 2021, December 1st. The Information Commissioner gave us 2 years. December 1st, 2023 was when everybody should have kind of registered and, even have compliance measures in place. Now we've heard of an extension of the 6 months. What needs to happen now?
All right, that's a good question, Marsha. So as you mentioned, we do have a 6 month extension period, but I don't think that, in typical Jamaican style, we go, all right, deadline, whew, can relax now. No, in the time that we have, person should be looking to put their, as you said, the registration particulars together. So you need to be going through the process and make sure that you know what these registration particulars are. You need to create an account on the Information Commissioner's website so that they can contact you when they're ready to start accepting registrations. And if there are any updates or any kind of communication, that you'll be able to get that communication from them. So as I said, don't relax, don't get complacent like, oh, have till June, it's okay, I don't need to rush. Now is the time to start working. You should have started already, to be honest. But
No, I know. I feel like a lot of people maybe are just trying to get their act together with it because I guess too with the Jamaican law, is enforcing a lot of these things and people have so many questions before they start to budget around it and put money to it because when people start looking at it, this whole data protection thing there, they don't understand and then it's like, how much money is this gonna cost the business? Right? So important things to note. So was that the end of our video? Did we have any other breach that we identified that could have been prevented? Leslie and Jalil?
I mean, there was the email that
Oh, how did we forget that?
or our employee
I clicked on the link.
clicked on at the end. Yeah, the phishing email that ended in him being hacked.
Yeah.
That was definitely a concerning outcome.
Yeah, no, I love the background music they had in the end to kind of highlight his clicking away. So yeah, no, that's I feel like that happens to a lot of people because they don't necessarily they're moving quickly throughout the day. And so they're just clicking and doing what they should do. But how many people actually stop, read the message, hover over all of the areas that they should?
Check the verbiage of the email.
Yeah, Jalil, tell me everything
Um,
we need to be doing when we get those
so
kind of emails.
when you get best practices, when you get a email, check the user, check who is come who the email is coming from, hover over the link to see the context potentially. Check the verbiage of the email, how the email is structured, if there's a lot of typos. Those are some of the stuff that you can look out for. Another step that you could do is there's a site called Virus Total. So you could use Virus Total, copy the link out of the email and then paste it.
Virus Total, that's
Yeah,
a
so
website?
it's a website. So essentially what it does, it can check to see if the link is malicious. So those are just some of the steps that you can do. There's also, if you get an email from somebody and again, trust but verify. So you can just, if you weren't expecting that email and it's kind of, they're taken aback by the email, you can always just call the person and just to verify, hey, did you send me this email? And you can maybe go over the context of the email just to make sure that who email is coming from is actually that person. So, check the body
Oh,
of the
I
email, check the
see.
email
Sorry, Jill.
address.
Someone is asking if you can type the site here. Yeah, that'd be really useful
Can you
for
type?
us to check it. Sure,
Yes,
we'll type it at the end for you.
Administrator, there are other sites as well, but some of the administrator will put it in the chat. It's called Virus Total, but they'll put it in the chat.
Great. Yeah, that's a big one. And I know that some companies put their employees through rigorous training,
Mm.
right? So talk to me about that and how that can help.
So security awareness training, basically you're making your employees, security aware, essentially. They're aware of the pitfalls, they're aware of the threats. I recommend you putting them through this training yearly.
Mhm.
So basically have a mixture. Essentially, how we normally structure it is you do a baseline first to see where everybody is at, and then you curate that training based off of that. So for tTech here, essentially we conduct training every quarter. So we do a baseline at the beginning of the year. After that, I look at essentially, where everybody's weak in, and I curate the training based off of that. I do a mixture as well. We do a mixture of phishing simulations just to test the staff to see after they do the training, where they actually paying attention. Because most of the times with trainings, a lot of users tend to just next to training and maybe Google or use ChatGPT to kind of uh, get the answers
Oh,
without
wow.
actually knowing the knowledge.
Yeah.
So we do a mixture of phishing simulations and just some hints and tips throughout the year to kind of boost the training.
Yeah.
So we have one major training, and then afterwards, for the other quarters, we'll have like mini dumps of training. And if a user fails to complete the training in that specified amount of time, their account is disabled and they're escalated.
Oh, yeah, no, a lot of people ask me, oh, what do we do if the staff doesn't complete the training? That's a big question I always get because, persons want the team to actually go through it, learn, and actually be able to implement some of those things. But is this mandatory out of the data protection law, Leslie? And like, is this something that companies have to do?
Yeah, so there is verbiage around ensuring that your staff is aware of the risks and that they're, regularly trained on how to handle these things. So yes, I would say, security awareness training is mandatory for your staff. And you do, as I said, need to have measures in place to enforce. So saying that you're doing training is not enough because you do have to have countermeasures to say, well, if you don't do the training, what happens? So as Jaleel mentioned, for us, if the training is not completed in a certain time, then accounts are locked.
Yeah.
So that is something that could be put into policy, like HR policy or other documents, just to say you definitely have to complete some kind of training and it's documented and you can regularly test if they're learning anything.
Yeah. Jalil, when I saw that employee get, the big UR hacked, are there measures that persons can put in place to prevent that outside of the security awareness training, more along the lines of protecting the devices, ensuring that persons don't get access to your network? What are some of the things that we need to like think about? Because I think that's a big part of it too, putting some of those measures in place.
So in the event that employee was careless and they clicked on a phishing link, what we have in place is you could potentially get an EDR solution. So essentially what
Wait,
EDR
hold on. What is
So
EDR? I
EDR
don't know what
is
that is.
endpoint detection and response. So essentially, it's the way how I describe it for human
Endpoint protection,
endpoint detection and
detection and response. Okay, got you.
So essentially, how I describe it to users is that it's antivirus, but it's antivirus on steroids. So essentially, it does what a traditional antivirus does. However, it's backed by various AI and detection engines to essentially provide a more holistic protection for your organization. So in that event, where they clicked on a link and they were compromised, most for EDR solution, it will prevent you from being compromised in the first place. And in the event that maybe it's a 0 day, it's a vulnerability that that was exploited when they clicked on the link is a 0 day, it's never been seen before. Essentially, what will happen if in the event that maybe it's a ransomware attack and a ransomware attack where they maybe encrypt data on your device, essentially what EDR solution does in that case is that it has something called ransomware rollback. So you click on the link, your device, your contents on your desktop is encrypted. What happens is that with either solution, there's something called ransomware rollback, where in the event that you're compromised, it can roll back to a previous state. So if you have sensitive information and those are encrypted on your device, only thing what will happen is it would act on its own to revert back to a previous state and remediate the vulnerability, the ransomware on your machine. In the event that it was a worm, so a worm is a virus that is self-replicating. So essentially, once you click the link, you don't really have to click the link. Once it's on your device, essentially what it does is that it spreads throughout your network from device to device, because all devices are most of the time connected throughout the network. So in that event, when you click the link and it's a worm, it identifies it as a worm and it's self-propagating throughout the network. Essentially, what will happen is that it would disconnect automatically based off of the policies that you set up before to disconnect that device from the network to protect the rest of the assets. So it's backed by a security operations center, which is a SOC as well, who's constantly monitoring the environment to make sure that all threats are remediated.
No, I just had a question. So when you say that, well, I think you're referring to tTech. tTech has that in place.
tTech has that.
Okay, because most EDRs that you mentioned, it just comes with that license to protect the computer.
Yeah.
But having a team on the back end actually monitoring and therefore assistance with remediation, working 24/7, that seems like it's an added layer of security.
Yeah. So especially with everybody getting ransomware attacks and everybody
Yeah.
getting attacked recently, it's a benefit
It's
to
been
have it
massive
in your
in Jamaica. I
organization.
feel like almost every week we hear about a new
Yeah,
incident
it's
taking
happening
place.
weekly at this point, or
Yeah.
daily at this point.
And those are the ones we actually read about. Can you imagine the ones that we actually don't see or it doesn't hit?
Majority of them
the
are
media.
not actually in the media. So yes, you have the ones that are announced. There's one that was announced recently. I think it was in January. But most of them are not actually announced. They just happen and it's kind of just swept underneath the rug. But with the
Yeah.
new data protection policy, less than, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to report in 72 hours.
I believe it's something like that. Yeah. You do have to do reporting in a very short period of time, and the information commissioner then would have, license to act on that.
Wow. Who do they need to report this to?
The information.
The information commissioner. Wow. Okay, well that's interesting. I know you mentioned less than some of, well, what we should be doing in terms of creating our account on the website and, waiting so that we can upload all our particulars. What would be the next step from that, like in terms of compliance? Do we have things that we need to start thinking about?
Well, definitely. So, as we've said before, but just as a refresher, the technical measures that need to be in place to be compliant with the Data Protection Act, you need to have encryption in place. You need to, as I said, do regular assessments. So you need to have regular vulnerability, penetration testing, etc. You do need to have the policies, encryption. You do need to have the policies in place. You need to be able to recover quickly in the event that there is an incident. So you need to have backup and recovery, incident response planning, some kind of, measure that helps you to recover and to protect the integrity of data that you are responsible for processing. So, after doing the registration, just making sure that you've registered with the Information Commission, the things that you need to ensure that you have in place, you need to see where your organization is in relation to these measures. Do I have encryption in place? Am I able to recover in the event of an incident? Do I have policies in place? Am I doing regular education campaigns and training my staff? So these are the things that you need to be looking at, Marsha, just to make sure that you are putting these things in place, or you already have them in place, or you're assessing where your organization is in relation to what should be in place.
Just to touch on the incident response plan. So with regards to your incident response plan, and it's best practice to actually review that plan. Most people say quarterly, you could do it every 6 months, yearly, but it's not good enough to just have the plan. You have to also test the plan. So essentially, if I have a incident response plan, what you can do is you perform tabletops, just to test the plan. You actively review that plan, every quarter, 6 months to a year, just to make sure that everybody's role is identified, so that when there's an incident, everybody's just on point and you move quickly to remediate. So from the communications to the incident response handlers, it should be documented within your plan, and everybody's role should be documented throughout the plan.
Amazing. What I do love is that I see the poll questions coming in And just about every response person is seem to know about the act. The poll question now is, have you implemented the technical control measures? And we have about 45% of folks saying yes, they have somewhat, which is fine. At least they're on the journey and trying to get that done. 62% know what somewhat. No one's at no. So that's amazing. Everybody here is pretty much doing something. So whether it is getting the things in place for registration, putting in the necessary technical control measures, and just waiting at this point, waiting to hear from the information commissioner. So excellent work, guys. I think we are gonna wrap up, but of course, I am going to share with, Leslie and Jalil. I want you guys to share any last words for the audience if they have anything else to share with the team.
But do they have any questions for us or?
Let's see in the chat. Can we check the chat to see if we got any
I
questions?
saw a note from Angela when we were talking about, EDR protection. He was just saying that it's the last line if your firewall doesn't catch it. And that's correct. That is correct. You're on the ball, Andrew. I don't see any questions there. I don't know.
Are there any questions from anyone else? I'm not seeing any questions. Yeah. All right, well, I'll hand over to you guys to wrap up. I'm not seeing many questions here, but guys, if you do have any before we wrap up, share some of the questions you may have in the chat and we can answer them.
All right, so just from me, it's imperative that everybody takes cybersecurity seriously. I know that kind of goes against Jamaicans generally don't take cybersecurity seriously, which is why you're seeing the rampant cases of fraudulent activities, bank accounts getting hacked, and stuff like that. But it's imperative that everybody takes the information and security seriously, because even I think it was last week, there was one of the biggest breaches ever in which was the 25 billion accounts were leaked recently. So it ranges from Twitter accounts, Instagram, LinkedIn, various websites that people use. So your data might be out there, your password data, including your passwords, your email addresses and stuff like that are leaked. And a lot of times users reuse the same password. So even though, it's just a Facebook account leaked and that's fine, but in that regards, you could be reusing the passwords in most cases, and then you can be compromised in another another account using that. So what I say is that, make sure that you have some level of multi-factor authentication set up on your all your accounts. Make sure that you don't reuse the same password at on different websites, applications, stuff like that. So make sure that passwords are unique. Make sure they're at least 12 characters or 15 characters, using variety of uppercase, lowercase letters, symbols, numbers, and that you enable multi-factor wherever possible.
Okay.
And change your passwords frequently. So like every quarter, I would say go through and change all the passwords.
To piggyback on what Jalil said, as data controllers, so companies that are processing personal information, you need to be mindful of what you're collecting. Do you actually need it? What's it for? How are you using it? Because all of this is information that you will need as you're going through the process of registration anyway. And to secure the data, you have to know where it's going. So be mindful of what you're collecting, how you're using it, how you're storing it. Be considerate of the fact that the data subjects are not just your customers, your employees are also data subjects, vendors, anybody whose information you have. And I think data controllers have the most information on their employees. So you need to be mindful of all the information that you are collecting and protect the information of your data subjects. It's essential because you are also a data subject to somebody else. So you would want your data to be protected. So protect the information. Don't take security lightly. Be proactive with the security and ensure that you are implementing the measures. If you are not sure about what to do or you need help, I mean, everyone needs help sometime. I mean, tTech does have a wide range of offerings. I do believe that we have a data protection bundle that we offer that allows us to assist you in a more cost-effective way. I mean, yes, there are significant costs around being ready for the Data Protection Act, but think of the cost of a breach, um, the reputational damage that comes with something like that, the fines, there's even jail time. The information commissioner can tell you to stop processing data if they find that you're in breach. So basically, shut down your business. So yes, it's expensive. It's not necessarily free, but what are the costs that come from non-compliance or a potential breach? It's definitely an investment that organizations need to do. Investing in cybersecurity, investing in protecting their organization against breaches. And yeah, those are my 2 cents on what we've discussed here today.
Thank you. No, that's scary to think about that they can actually
Somebody asked a question.
ask you to stop processing personal data. And I think every single organization pretty much has something on their employees, so that is personal data, right? Yes, we can share this with you, Christopher, so we will send that over to you. All right, thank you all for attending today's data protection webinar. We hope you guys learned some insightful information and that you're able to help you recognize some of the breaches that really go unnoticed in organizations, because some of these are the slightest thing. We hope you all enjoyed and learned. You can always contact tTech at sales@tTech.com.gm if you have any questions. Of course, I'm going to piggyback on Leslie Ann. We have an awesome data protection bundle special that is running for the next 6 months to help organizations better prepare around the technical control measures that they need to have in place. All right. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.
All right, guys, have a good day.
Bye, everyone.